All right. So before you blow a gasket, let's move on to the last segment, which is the last movie review, and that movie is Lolita.
Yeah, thank you. I need to move on because I'm.
Yeah,
I'm
you need to move on. So let's get into that, and let's start off with a quick synopsis. The synopsis is a screenwriter penned with a screenwriter penned by the author himself. Stanley Kubrick brings Vladimir Nabokov's controversial tale. Yeah, damn Russians. Controversial tale of forbidden love to the screen. Humbert is a European professor who relocates to an American suburb, renting a room from lonely widow Charlotte Hayes. Humbert marries Charlotte, but only to nurture his obsession with her comely teenage daughter, Lolita. After Charlotte's sudden death, Humbert has Lolita all to himself. Or does he?
It's very good. So it's a fucked up film. I'll have
It
to
is.
say that.
It is. It's a very fucked up film. And I mean, before we started, I mused to Robert that the alternative title for this movie could be "Birth of the Boomer."
Yeah.
Because it basically shows the absolute failure of the generation before that created the baby boomers.
Yeah, that's definitely the case.
Right, it's because you have the scene where the kids are at the dance and like the parents are there to chaperone and
Chaperone.
Yeah, chaperone. And Mrs. Hayes and like I think some family friends they're there to chaperone and they're like saying like, oh, we're very liberal minded. I think they're probably. Confirm this for me or not. But I think they're talking about swinging.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I got out of that too.
Yeah, just checking.
The only one who even like raised some sort of like kind of like that's a little weird was the fucked up professor.
Initially, he's like. Ugh.
It's like I don't think that's a good thing for a child. I mean, obviously he had ulterior motives in that, but it's like he still had some semblance of virtue. Like I said,
he had some morality. Just not enough.
This movie really challenged a lot. I mean, I had this movie come out like 10 years ago, like the subject matter, I don't think would be quite so shocking.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was blown away by, this is 1962 when this movie came out. And
right, but they did have to. Yeah, they did depend highly on like implication and innuendo.
Right, because nothing was shown.
Right, nothing was explicit. Nothing was explicitly said or shown in this movie.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, that is something. I mean, obviously, nobody wants to see that. I would think, but no normal person would want to see that. But the fact, I was uncomfortable. Like, and this is, I think, Stanley Kubrick's intent is like you're very uncomfortable the entire movie.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're not necessarily rooting for anything. Because you don't want like this, tawdry relationship between, Humbert and Lolita to work out, or it's like it's very icky, especially when like when she like calls him dad, in front of like friends or teachers and things like that. And it's like,
and so you have. Where do I start? Because everything is so fucked up. So you have the initial like scene of the film is you have Professor Humbert, who before we know anything about the film, he's coming to I forget Peter Sellers' character name in this film. He was Professor Humbert comes into this
Quitley.
kind of
Claire Quitley.
Yeah. He goes into this guy's place, which is mansion that's all kind of like it's clearly there's been a party or a party or 2 or 50 that have gone on there that is fucking shit faced.
Right. He goes to confront him.
And for kind of essentially saying like you manipulated and kind of fucked my daughter, so like you're gonna die. And so Professor Humbert at that time seems very virtuous, like that's what any dad would do or stepdad, worth their weight. That's what
or any father figure.
Yeah, anyone that like touches my kids like that, they're gonna die. So and there's this kind of interesting scene between these 2 characters, and it obviously ends up with Professor Humbert shooting him. And then we get into the actual story of how it was like 4 or 5 years before, and Professor Humbert is, I guess, moving to a different university, needs a place to stay.
Yeah, he's a visiting lecturer, and he just needs a place to stay before he himself gets settled. And he goes to this woman, Charlotte Hayes' home, and she's a widow, and a widowed single mother, and she's showing them the room, like, oh, wouldn't this be great? And she's definitely trying to play up how smart she is, how cultured she is, and like points out like, oh, I'm president of this society, and we brought this person to come and lecture or give us a talk, and it's like, oh, and check out all these paintings, they're reproductions, but here's a Monet, here's a whatever, here's a Van Gogh. Humbert at first is just like, it's like, okay, yeah, great, this is nice. I'll have to think it over, and then she brings him out to like the backyard and say, oh, check out my garden, and then see, look at all these beautiful flowers, and just so happens like her daughter is there, sunbathing, and immediately Humbert is not thinking with it, with his top head.
Oh yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, it's like he's like kind of the camera focuses in on the daughter Lolita, and it's just like, no, wrong, yeah, like the actress that played Lolita, like pretty hot,
Yeah, admittedly, yes.
But it's like it's kind of this, that's the moment. It's like, I think I'll take the room,
Yeah.
And so then it's like, okay, obviously, like, and it's like, oh, what was it that sold it? It was the flowers, wasn't it? It was the backyard. That was what you're really. It's like, yeah, it was the backyard, and like, everything's great,
Yeah.
It's like,
so it is perfect, and yeah, and slowly, you see him like give little glances at her, and there's like that scene where they went to the drive-in movie, and they're watching, a scary movie, and he grips, Lolita's hand, and then she like grips it back, and then like the mother tries, is startled, and she tries to grip Humbert's hand, but then notices that Lolita's hand's over it already, and it's like, and then from that point on, there seemed to have been like this very contentious, almost like jealousy from the mother towards her daughter.
So, okay, well, because here's what I thought too, right? Like, because we know that she's a widow, that Charlotte Hayes is a widow, and it's like, why is she like having some strange man, like as far as like renting the room? My thinking is that we don't know how. I don't think we were told how long ago it was that her husband died. But I think she was, like she sees this man who's like, oh, he's cultured. He seems fairly attractive. He's foreign, so it's like, oh, he has the accent and all that stuff. So you have, I think there was like she was trying to lure him in, and obviously like his focus is on Lolita, and there's this weird like kind of like tug of war almost, because there's even parts where like Lolita is kind of, I think, like making moves on the professor as well.
Right.
And yeah, so it yeah, like I said, and the drive-in is kind of like where things kind of get started. And God, it just the mood, it's so weird. Like it just it's so weird even talking about this.
Yeah, it's a very disturbing movie. I mean, I will give props to the actors and like the performances. It was good.
Like I
It was
said,
very good.
my rating of this movie is very high just because of the very uncomfortable like situation that Stanley Kubrick created. Like it's very genuine. Like I was like I felt
very unsettled. I was like,
but
it's
all
like
the
watching this.
acting and everything was done is brilliant. It was great. It just God, the material is really fucked up. So to stay close to Lolita, who is the person that he really cares about, he marries Charlotte. Yet he has also been keeping a journal of his weird thoughts of like the feelings he has for Lolita, and so what his real thoughts are about Charlotte. And Charlotte is a very clingy, kind of eccentric woman. And anytime that like Heron goes to the bathroom for more than like 2 minutes, like she's like, "Humby, where are you, huh?
Right,
Where are you?"
She's very clingy and like very insecure about herself. Because I think she does sense something between her daughter Lolita and Humbert.
Yeah, cause I think there's, I don't know if she sensed it between those two, but like she knows, like she thinks of her daughter as like her competition.
Yeah, it's very Freudian.
Yeah,
yeah, in that kind of like that Electra kind of way. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and so she had sent her off to Charlotte had sent Lolita off to this girls' summer camp, and during that time, Charlotte discovers Humbert's diary or journal, and is reading like his thoughts, and that's when she realized like his real feelings, and she, in a fit of suicidal rage, ends up like running out into like the street and gets hit by a car. And that's where the story kind of gets more really messed up. Because then you have, because like, okay, so now they're married, obviously, and so Humbert goes to grab Lolita from the summer camp, and he initially lies to her for some weird, because I don't know if he like is, I don't know what the reasoning was, maybe because he didn't want to hurt her, or because he was like trying to keep her joyfulness to himself. I don't know what was going on with that.
Right, that was a weird scene. Yeah, that was a weird part of the movie where it's like, why don't you just like come out like immediately and say like, oh, your mom's dead. But yeah, I could see him like maybe wanting to prolong like this good feeling from her. So like I don't know.
Well, because like he did say that like they were going, if they had to go to the hospital because like something like her mom got like sick or something like that, or like got injured. But he says like, oh, it's not serious or anything like that, and kind of like lied to her. And they have this like journey, like because it's a several days journey back to back to that town. And they obviously stay in, like the first night they stay in a motel or hotel, and yeah, it's just they clearly, like, it's not shown, but
Right. It's heavily implied that they did the nasty.
oh yeah,
Yeah, it's heavily implied that they did the nasty. But yeah, from that point on, it's kind of downhill for them, and Humber, it kind of like flips, and Humber becomes the one that's kind of becomes insecure and always wanting to know where Lolita's in and like trying to control her, like her movements and her activities. Um, to the point where Lolita has to take extraordinary measures for for her to get Humber to allow her to participate in the school play. Um, but it
right,
wasn't. And then when he relents, um, it was found out that she was actually lying to him about like piano lessons that he had set up for her, but then she had not gone to her piano lessons, saying that telling the piano teacher that I wanted more time to rehearse, but in that time she might have been doing God knows what, and so they kind of
right,
have it out, and they have like this huge blow up, and like and, like some of the neighbors can hear and like inquire to see what was going on, but yeah, and then so she disappears for a little bit, but she says like because he had implored her to run away with him. It's like, oh, we have no ties in this town, we can just pull up and just get out of here. And so initially she is very upset with him, but once Humbert like happens upon her in a phone booth, her attitude changes. It's like, you're right, let's just get out of here, and let's go off on a grand adventure. And so they do so, but on their travels, they Humbert starts noticing a car that's following them.
right.
Yeah, and so this car like constantly following them, and it eventually gets to the point where Humbert's trying to get away from this guy, and he blows out a tire, and and then and that's when Lolita starts feeling sick, and so Humbert starts feeling sick, and so they check into a hospital where she can receive some treatment. But it's there at the hospital where she starts saying like, oh, I want to go back, or or where they kind of they're kind of like butting heads again. Um,
Yeah, and it was all the suspicions that Humberg had were kind of true in a sense, because it turns out that the one of the guys that he kind of was suspecting, like, it turned out that he was playing several characters in very Peter Sellers fashion, by the way.
yeah, yeah, yes, because long time, I guess, like well-known collaborator with Stanley Kubrick's, Peter Sellers is in this movie.
Yeah, he played several different characters, but it was the same. He was playing this. He was the same guy, but he was the guy playing a guy that was playing several different characters.
Right.
And it was a ruse to. So he obviously knew the situation that was going on between Lolita and Professor Humberg.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's sort of implied that they also had, Lolita and him also had some sort of relationship going on,
right.
Sexual probably, and he worked to get her away from him.
Uh-huh.
And that was kind of like where the tension became towards the end of the movie, was the all that, it kind of culminated at the hospital where, like, she ends up getting discharged, but it was like, oh, it was some uncle that took her out, and he was almost arrested at the hospital because everything is like, oh, it's all right, it's all right.
Yeah, 'cause he was crazed, and he was like, like he was trying to like muscle his way, back into Lolita's room, but that's when the orderlies came, and it's like, oh, if you don't stop acting crazy, we're gonna have to like commit your, we have to, call the cops, and it's like, no cops, no cops.
And then he spent several years like trying to track her down to no avail.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like she sent him some letter for like she needed like money and assistance for her life, because she had gotten married and all this stuff, and like I need money and all this, and that's kind of like the final scene of the movie where he ends up, Professor Humberg breaks down in tears like, oh, just leave him, and I love you, and all this other
I still love you, and it's like, and she was like get a hold of yourself, man. It's like one of those situations.
Yeah. The other thing is like, Lolita is kind of a, not that she was asking for it, like, 'cause that's not really the case either.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of, something clearly had happened to her in life where she was very manipulative in a lot of ways, and like, because she was the one that made the moves on Professor Humbert at the at that hotel, like where they first got it on at.
Right.
So, and for what was she, like 15, 16 years old at the time? Like, clearly something had happened to her earlier in life that like, and she had said like, yeah, I'd been with like a lot of like older men, and like she'd been around. She was no she was no
virtuous maiden, let's just say.
Yeah, and which is probably part of the the very liberal upbringing she had, like from her mom, who and like her mom's friends, like who knows what the fuck happened to her.
Yeah,
that's part of the story that we don't get, because I was talking about like something similar to this the other day with some of my students, is with some of these hard subjects in life, is one of the terrible things when it comes to something like this that we don't realize, that a lot of the people that kind of because we were talking about suicide, and part of the problem is with people who get involved with certain things like suicide, or they're very promiscuous, or they get into being into a homosexual lifestyle, is like something clearly has gone wrong in their life somewhere, and one of the factors is kind of sexual molestation or sexual abuse of some sort, like plays a part in some of these cases. And clearly that's the case with Lolita. Something must have happened with Lolita that we just don't really know.
Yeah, we're just not privy to.
And yeah, it's just, so it's like you have all the, like, because there's no hero. There's no hero in this movie. There's no
one to root for in this movie.
It's like they're all antagonists in some way.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part of the movie that makes it very uncomfortable, because there's not many movies where like there's no one to root for.
Right.
Yeah, it's also still so compelling that you want to keep watching. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in that way, it's like a train wreck. Not to rush things, but yeah, like the internet's like really wonky, and I'm afraid that we might get dropped. So let's try to wrap things up.
All right, so those are thoughts I had about the movie. I'm ready to give my rating. Do you have any final thoughts, Andy?
No. Yeah, this is a really fucked up movie. I mean, the only saving grace of this movie is the performances, and probably the direction from Stanley Kubrick. So yeah, other than that, like in terms of like message and And themes, it's all garbage. But yeah, the only saving grace is the performances.
So what's your rating, Andy?
I'm gonna give this a 3.
You're giving it a 3?
Yeah.
So we're gonna disagree on this. I actually give it a 4.5.
4.5.
Because yeah, yes, the subject of the movie is terrible. Like it's really dark, but you have the performances. You have, like I said, you have no hero in this movie, yet you're still like you want to. I wanted to keep watching just to figure out what's going to happen here. I think it's not his best work, but it's damn near up there. And the fact that this was from 1962 is man, that this must have like shocked the hell out of a ton of people who watched this in theaters.
Well, yes. Actually, there is a quote from Stanley Kubrick about this movie. He said, "If I knew it was going to be this censored, I wouldn't have made it."
Oh, so it was very censored. So we're probably getting
not like in the sense of what he was allowed to show, but probably what he was even allowed to film. So like in the beginning, like the story was probably heavily redacted or censored, and so like he wasn't able to do everything that he wanted to. So like so he had to settle for like the implications and like the innuendo.
Yeah, but I think that adds to a lot of. I think that gives it more punch. Like I see the thing is like I don't want to actually see that, but the innuendo and like you kind of like let your imagination do the work. It's like, oh, those two people fucked. It's kind of I think that's more powerful in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, and you're not wrong about that. So
because it's a disgusting monster that you don't want to see.
Right. Exactly.